Hello, welcome to the live streaming of CGTN. I'm Zheng Yun in Beijing. Well, this evening we're going to talk about a very special topic. It's space exploration. What's needed for the exploration into the universe, into the space, deep space. And joining me now in this evening is Mr. Yang Yuguang, who is the Vice Chair of the International Astronautical Federation's Space Transportation Committee, and also Mr. Zhu Jin, former curator of the Beijing Planetarium, and also he's a researcher and consultant in this organization, very famous in China. And also joining me online is Mr. Giuseppe Rubati. He's the president of the Moon Village Association, and also Mr. Anubhav Ghosh. He's chair of Science Operation Working Group. He's been working for NASA on the Mars mission since 1997. So welcome, gentlemen. So we all know that during the recent times, that China has launched the core module of the space station, the Tianhe, and also the cargo ship. And following that, there's going to be other activities, space activities for the launch. So let's start from you, Mr. Yang. So what do you think of the China space station programs? What's the next steps?
Well, you know that China's manned space program has a three-step strategy. The final goal is to set up a permanent residency in space or a space station. You know that's this because you know that we develop this kind of technology is not only to just for the technologies itself, but to scientific research in space. So a space station is very necessary. Although we can also do some small experiments on the Shenzhou spaceship or the Tiangong 1 and Tiangong 2 laboratories, but space station is necessary. So before we can construct a space station, we must do a lot of preparations. For instance, we must master the technology to send astronauts into space and safely come them back. So this is a fundamental requirement, and we achieved this goal through the Shenzhou 5 mission by Mr. Yang Liwei in 2003. So that's the first step. And then you know that rendezvous and docking is also a basic requirement, because you know that today no spacecraft or no launch vehicle can launch a very huge space station into space. So we must have rendezvous and docking to combine the different parts of the station together and then form a huge station. And also, the astronauts visiting station must rendezvous first and docking with the station and together with the cargo ships. So the rendezvous and the docking technology is also very important for us. We achieved this goal by launching the target vehicle Tiangong 1 and with the three spacecraft, the Shenzhou 8, Shenzhou 9, and the Shenzhou 10 missions. With all these three missions, we master the docking technologies, either automatic docking or manual docking. And of course, besides these two technologies, the third one, the EVA or extravehicular activity, is also very important. You see that this is not only to for the construction of the station, but also you know that many scientific research must be done outside the station. So in 2008, through the Shenzhou 7 mission, Mr. Zhai Zhigang becomes the first one of Chinese astronauts to go out of his Shenzhou spaceship and perform a spacewalk. So that's all the preparations for constructing the station. But this is not all the technologies, only those most important technologies. Today, you know that as you mentioned, our Tianhe core module is launched by this very huge Long March 5B launch vehicle. But please pay attention that the Tianhe 1 is today not the formal core module, but called the experimental core module. Only after 2 years after the Shenzhou 12 and the Shenzhou 13 mission, and also after Tianzhou 2 and the Tianzhou 3 missions, we can have an evaluation. If everything is okay and it is proved, it is qualified, then it can formally be named as the formal core module of China's space station. This is because you know that still we have many technologies have not been verified. For instance, the long-term duration. The longest record of our astronauts in space is during the Shenzhou 11 mission. They stayed in the space for about 1 month. But today, you know that in the future, in the routinary rollover of astronauts, they should stay there for at least 6 months. So this time, we will have a step-by-step closer to our goal to have 3 months residence in space by the Shenzhou 12 mission. Just will happen this month. And also, you know that there are also many technologies. I think, to my view, one of the most important is the regenerative life support system. You see that even today, because of the cost to transport anything into space is still very expensive. So the every amount of resupply is very valuable. For instance, the cost to send 1 kilograms of water into our space station is much, much more expensive than the same amount of gold.
Yes.
So you see, all the water, the oxygen, and other things must be recycled. So we have a regenerative life support system to recover our water, to recover our carbon dioxide and other things. So we must also master this technology. And also there are many other technologies to testify.
So one of the things is the science experiments you just mentioned inside the space station and outside the space station. And Mr. Zhu Jing has done a lot of job to promote the space science and also the knowledge of astronomy. So have you got any knowledge or any idea about a possible experiment would be done to publicize the science in the China space station?
Yeah, I think in future, after the fully construction of this space station, there will be many scientific experiment as well as technical experiment. And I know we already make some selection of the first several scientific experiment will be there in the Chinese space station under its microgravity environment, and also there outside there also some vacuum, nearly vacuum environment. And I think after this year there will be another 3 launch with Shenzhou and also Tianzhou, and to finish the first test part, as Mr. Yang said. And also next year, I think maybe the first 2 launch will be the laboratory part. So the Wentian and also Mengtian. So, and after that, I think we'll see the start of this science. And also, several years later, there will be another space telescope together attached to this space station. So it's called Xuntian and Engineering Survey Telescope. So I hope it could be some very interesting astronomical observation from this telescope. Yeah.
Yes. So Mr. Ghosh, this question goes to you. So have you seen some kind of the information about the telescope on China space station? What's the difference between it and also the Hubble?
So I have not had the details of the telescope on the Chinese space station, unfortunately. But the Hubble is, it gave us a once in a, unheard of clarity and magnification into the heavens. And the most significant, I think, discovery from the Hubble was way back in the 90s, where they did this experiment and they found that there were way too many galaxies in the universe than we ever have thought. So essentially, they portrayed a section of the sky for maybe a couple of weeks, and they, when they processed the results, they found that the points of light that they were looking at were actually galaxies with 100 billion stars. So I think this, on the same vein, the reason to have a space station like the Chinese space station or Chinese telescope on the space station is that above the Earth, where you don't have the atmospheric effects and the light, the view is much, much clearer. So there is a very big case, and that is why you have these space stations, the telescopes in space, so that you have a much clearer view of the sky and the stars.
Yeah, so when we're talking about what's needed for exploring the space, the telescope in the orbit of the Earth is really important because it has no obstacles in space. So, Mr. Zhu, the further questions goes to you. So, what do you think the special features of the telescope of China on the China space station?
Well, I think first, from what I know, is it should be some optical telescope which are maybe in similar size with Hubble, but it's because it will be in the same orbit with this space station, so not fully connected to the space station, but fly together. And in this way, I think it's quite more efficient. And if when we need to do something to make a repair or to add some fuel, and it could connect to the space station very easily. And in this case, also I heard that the field of view of this optical telescope will be much larger than Hubble. Will be 300 times larger than Hubble's space telescope. So I think it's at least to the Chinese Astronomical Society is currently it will be the largest space telescope for us, and I hope and already China now is already set up 4 different science centers for this. It's called CGTN or Chinese Space Telescope. So I hope after its launch, 2 years later, 3 years later, maybe.
Okay, so Mr. Rabati, this question goes to you. As for the, you've been working for the European Space Agency for a really long time. You've been a very professional and expert in this field in Europe. So from your perspective, what is the use of Hubble? What is the use of the other telescope? And what is the applications you have met?
Well, first of all, I had the pleasure to work 16 years on the International Space Station. And as such, I've been responsible for developing basically all the big payload outside or inside. So the space station, the International Space Station, and I assume as a consequence also the Chinese space station, is going to use to carry a suite of experiments. And one of the main advantages of carrying this experiment on board the space station is that they can be repaired. So in case there is a problem with the functioning of this instrument, you have the possibility to send astronauts out and having repair. The Hubble Space Telescope was not on the space station orbit, it was higher, but it was a very hazardous mission, the one that led to the refurbishment. So having experiment, let's say, inside and outside the space station, the Chinese or the ISS, is opening a completely new field of scientific and technological investigation. So in a nutshell, the main advantage is of course, it has been already explained, that is outside, let's say, the atmosphere. But the other important element is that from the radiation standpoint, because we are outside the atmosphere, you can have a lot of different investigation. I have personally worked on a solar observatory, which has been developed on the Columbus, which is put on the Columbus, which was measuring basically the quantity of energy which has been sent to Earth, which is an important parameter for a number of activity. So there is a lot of work which is going on the outside of the space station. And so there is a lot of capability for the scientific community to propose experiments.
Yes, Mr. Yang, you just mentioned just the outline, the whole picture of how the space projects is developed in China and also for the future. So from your perspective, since China just invited the international community to join in the the China space station, so have you got any invitation, or the European Space Agency received any invitation or participate into that?
Well, first of all, I am not any longer with the European Space Agency. I left the organization 9 years ago, so I don't know the technical detail of the programmatic. What I know that there is a number of European astronauts which are training for a possible flight on board the Chinese space station. And some of the astronauts, I know them personally, like Samantha Cristoforetti has been learning Chinese, and I think there's been some preliminary training, first level training in China, but I don't know about any, let's say, programmatic agreement. As far as basically the type of activity which the station and the invitation, I'm fully aware that China has been inviting a number of governments to cooperate and propose experiment. In particular, I'd like to mention the United Nations. China, and this I am aware, has signed an agreement with the Office of Outer Space of the United Nations to basically allow countries, in developing countries in particular, to access the Chinese space station. So China is demonstrating to open her own space station to the international cooperation, and now that the station is about to get basically realized and working, we shall see a number of increasing cooperation between different countries around the world, like it has been in the case of the International Space Station.
And also, Mr. Yang, so at the very first age, back to the decades ago, China was not included in the International Space Station program. So over the years, what kind of difficulties the country has met, and how to solve it?
Well, you know that during 1990s, we do hope that we can cooperate with the other countries in manned space engineering. But it is a very great pity that they don't allow us to join. You know that for a space-capable nation, especially for a big country like China, it is very important to have its manned space activities. This is our opinion that we must have our own astronauts and our manned space activities. But how to do it? You know that Japan and Europe choose to cooperate with US and Russia, so they don't have their independent space transportation capabilities, but they do have very great achievements in space science and other, for instance, space life science research. But we know that, as I have mentioned, for China, the goal is not only to have our own spaceships or have our space stations, but to perform scientific research in space. And you know that before in 1990s, because we know that we were already not included in the ISS, so we just have to develop our own programs. That is the reason that the China Satellite Television made the decision to set up our own human space program in 1992, just the 21st of September. So it is called 921 project. Just from that moment, we are all depending on our own to develop our own Shenzhou spaceships and also the Tiangong laboratories. But during this course, we do have many international cooperations with other countries. For instance, our astronauts were trained in Russia, in Moscow. So we have a good relationship with Russia, and we do have some cooperation on technical details about how to train the astronaut and so on. And also, you know that for a manned space mission, especially for flight missions, we not only need the ground station in our country, in our territory, but we also need the stations in other countries. So ESA and other countries provided their support to us for the telemetry support. And also, you know that during the very critical coming back to the Earth, this procedure, we have our stations in Karachi, in Pakistan. Also, we have our stations in Namibia and also in Malindi, in Africa. So all these countries helped us during our space program, especially during the very critical procedures that is very crucial or even very dangerous for the astronauts. So we should say thank you to all these countries for their help. But on the other hand, because of that today we already have our own very comprehensive system or industry on manned space activities. So we now have our own stations. So today we can also, as Mr. Giuseppe Ribadi has mentioned, we can now provide chances for other countries to have our experiments on board our stations. So UNOSA, as I know, some of my friends from the China Manned Space Agency, they even stay in Vienna, in UNOSA, to work together and to dealing with the issues about the joint experiments. So today, many proposals were delivered to China Manned Space Agency, and also many of them, including those from other countries, are chosen. So they have the chance to do their experiments on board the China Space Station. And also, as Mr. Giuseppe has mentioned, the foreign astronauts also have the chance to visit the China Station. This is called, as mentioned by the China Manned Space Agency, is the second level of cooperation. So the foreign astronauts will learn to operate our Shenzhou spaceship and perform maybe their scientific research on board our station in the future. And in the future, also there are other chances, greater chances. For instance, maybe a visit of foreign spacecraft to China's station, either a cargo ship or even a crewed spaceship. And in the future, it is also possible. You see that China has a very close contact with the European side, with the main members of ESA, such as Italy, Germany, and other countries, to talk about the possibility to have a module made by other countries. You know that on board the International Space Station, there's a module called Columbus, made by ESA. So in the future, it is also possible for China to have a module docked to China station as part of it, as a permanent part of this station. This is from the view of technology. This is also possible because you know that the 3-module design is the initial stage of China's station, the Tianhe, Wentian, Mengtian, together with the Xuntian telescope. But in the future, it is also extendable to add another core module, a secondary core module to the station, and because this core module will also have multiple docking ports, so it is possible to dock a module even from other countries to this station. So that at that moment, there is an interesting story that during the Congress of Astronauts in 2014, the foreign astronauts asked Mr. Yang Liwei, will China's space station named ISS-2? So Mr. Yang Liwei said, the name is not important, but the important thing is to have the cooperations. So I think if this happens, it will benefit the whole world.
Yes, so Mr. Goff, this question goes to you. I'm just wondering, after the retirement of the ISS, what's going to be the further international cooperation on the space station program? Not only China, but also from other countries.
So I don't know when the ISS will be retired, the International Space Station. I think it might be to 2025, but they can extend it further to 2030. So I think after the ISS ends, NASA's next goal, and they're perhaps examining it at this point, is whether they can have a space station around the moon, a lunar space station. And of course, the priorities will shift, and so they will try to build something different, a different space station around the moon. And as you know, exploration-wise, NASA's goal is to go back to the moon with the Artemis program, and that is supposed to land American astronauts on the moon by 2024.
So that's the big leap forward. The space station is only the first frontier. When I talked to Mr. Rubati yesterday, and Mr. Zhu Jin, we all know that back to many years ago, the United States also donated the 0.5 gram lunar samples to China, and Chinese scientists did a lot of experiments and also wrote some kind of the ISIS on that. So what's the role? What's the significance of this donation, and what the following experiment pushes China to go forward? What do you think of that?
Well, I think the research on the moon is also very important, and also in the Chinese we have a Chang'e series and different landing on the moon, and so also we already have the moon soil and also some rocks from the moon already by the Chinese moon lander come back. So currently in the National Astronomical Observatory, they have a very large group on this. And currently, I think they already make some progress, but maybe not announced yet. But yeah, I think this one is very important, especially for our like in our planetarium, we are not only do some scientific research, but also do the outreach and education things. So I think this kind of space exploration is very, very important for the young people to get pay more attention and interest in the science. So also our planetarium want to do something. Yeah.
So whether there will be the sample, the lunar samples will be donated or sent to the Beijing Planetarium for the exhibition to the public.
Yeah,
It'll be
currently
really
it's already
impressive.
In the
National Museum of China.
Yeah,
It's on display. Mr. Yang, talking about this part, what's China's following plan on the move?
Well, you know, our long-term goal is to set up a base on the lunar surface, either a robotic base or a manned base. But before that, you know that China also do a lot of things, as Mr. Zhu Jin have mentioned. So first, you know that to have lunar exploration, first you must achieve goal of orbiting or go to there. You know that lunar exploration started from the end of 1950s last century, but at that era there are so many failures. Almost more than half of the rockets launched were failed during that era. So because you know that until now China is still a developing country, so we must using the money and perform our project very carefully. So during the first launch in Chang'e 1 mission, we doesn't choose the way to directly go to the moon. We first launched Chang'e 1 into a geosynchronous orbit with the apogee only about 36,000 kilometers. Then the spacecraft raising its apogee by its own engines, one circle by one circle. So this makes it a chance to adjust its orbit after every orbit maneuver, and finally it goes to the moon. So this is a very careful way, but it's very fit. I think it is reasonable for China to choose this way first. Then it becomes the first moon satellite of China. So we just get the experience, and then during the 2010 we launched the Chang'e 2. So this time we can go directly from the Earth to the moon and become a moon orbiter. And moreover, the Chang'e 2 mission is not only a moon orbiter, but also it goes deep into the space. For instance, it goes to the liberation point, and then it even taking shots of a very small asteroid. So although it is a moon mission, but this Chang'e 2 mission make a preparation not only for the future moon missions, but also for the deep space missions such as our Mars missions. Then the soft landing of the Chang'e 3 and Chang'e 4. And Chang'e 4, I should emphasize, it is the first soft landing on the far side ever been done by human being. So this is the first. And the Magpie Bridge, the data relay satellites, plays a very important role for this mission. And as Mr. Zhu Jin has mentioned, our Chang'e 5 mission, it is very interesting that Chang'e 5, the whole mission profile, is very, very similar to the Apollo program. So this is the reason we can get about 1,700 grams of lunar reckless back to the Earth. You know that during the former Soviet Union lunar missions, the Lunar 16, 20, and 24, all these three missions can get back the samples only about more than 300 grams. So we achieve the goal with even one mission with more samples than the total of all these three missions. The reason, as I mentioned, is to choose a very similar mission profile. Exactly speaking, is a lunar orbit rendezvous and docking. So this is very important. And several years before, I heard from the China's leaders in space field. They say that we choose this complex mission profile if we can get a larger rocket in the future. It will be very smooth for us to get human missions to the moon. So this is Chang'e 5 mission. As you asked, our goal will be focusing on the South Pole regions. So the Chang'e 6 will have a sample return from the South Pole regions. And then the Chang'e 7 will have some on-site research on the South Pole regions. And the Chang'e 8 will not only perform scientific research, but also will demonstrate some technologies. Just about 2 days before, the China National Space Administration said that the Chang'e 7 and the Chang'e 8 will form the basic configuration of China's future robotic lunar research station on the surface. Together, we'll have a mission from Russia side, you know, the Lunar 25.
Yes.
Lunar 25 and all the Chang'e 7 and 8 missions will be recognized as the first stage of the robotic station on the lunar surface. You know that Dr. Giuseppe Ribati is our leader in Moon Village Association.
Yes.
In our principle, all these can be recognized as the MVA missions. because you know that in the future, this kind of scientific research, together with those, as Mr. Gauch has mentioned, manned missions to the moon. You know that although there is no message from the central government, because you know that the human missions to the moon has not been approved by the China central government, but today the leaders of China Aerospace and some of my friends from China's manned space, including those Chinese astronauts, has expressed their wish to have human missions to the moon. I believe sooner or later we will have these kind of missions. And also, you see that we've already do a lot of preparations. For instance, just during the maiden flight of this Long March 5B, we launched a test vehicle of the new generation manned spaceship. This spaceship is more than 20 times mass, and it's feasible for the future moon missions. And also, you know that for human missions, we need a bigger rocket. So today, we are waiting for the 500-ton level thrust rocket engines. We just do these kind of preparations.
But on the other hand, a lot of people will say, not only China, not only the United States, but also the Russia and other countries all have the individual plans to set the foot on the moon. So they're going to be saying that there would be the fierce competition on the moon. That would be the frontier for people from different nations to compete together. So from you, Mr. Rubati, what is the proper way of using the sources on the moon?
Well, first of all, let me tell you that I don't like to talk about competition. I like to talk about cooperation. And let me take the opportunity to mention that indeed, being the president of the Moon Village Association, the organization has been created just to act as a platform to allow stakeholders from government, space agency, as well as industry, academia, to really talk to each other in an uninformal, let's say, frame, like it is the Moon Village Association, in order to establish cooperation. And in fact, one of the most challenging issues looking forward to the moon exploration and utilization, it is the cooperation. Because a number of missions, as Dr. Yang has already explained, are going to go to the South Pole. So as a consequence, we have to make sure that going in a very close proximity to each other, all the different stakeholders do not make what is called harmful interference without knowing or without doing on purpose. So one of the important goals is on the programmatic policy level to try to agree within the different stakeholders going to the moon and going to this region, a behavior, a rule of behavior, what is called best practice or a framework agreement, so that the different stakeholders will know how they will behave going forward to the moon. So this is a challenge. It's happening right now. We have set up a so-called Global Expert Group on Sustainable Lunar Activity, which is indeed a group of member states, including China, United States, as well as Russia and all other major stakeholders, which are trying to agree, define, and then agree how to behave in a responsible way going forward to the moon in order to avoid a Wild West. And this is, of course, valid, including also the space resources.
So, and also, one of the questions is, what do you think it would be the next or the closest project these countries can work together in terms of cooperation?
Well, the Moon Village. The Moon Village is, it has been referred even earlier, it is basically, by definition, bringing together all different stakeholders, so China, United States, and everybody else in the world, in exploring and utilizing the moon in a sustainable and responsible way. I'd like to mention that while the International Space Station has seen in the development the cooperation of about 16 to 17 countries, the Moon Village should see a cooperation between 100 countries. And this is exactly what we are aiming to. We should give as a clear indication to the public that going to the moon is not a privilege only of one country, but all humanity goes to the moon. Let us not forget the plaque which has been left by the Apollo 11 going forward to the moon. We came on peace for all mankind. Well, now it's time to realize in practice this with the moon village.
Yes, this is not the Wild West. This is a much civilized world, and people need to cooperate on this factor, and that's what we needed in exploring the universe, the space. And Mr. Ghosh, let's go back to you, and because you have been working for the Mars mission since 1997 for the NASA. So what do you think of the current mission of the United States, the Mars missions, Mars probing missions that's going on right now?
Right. Let me just, for a little while, make one small point about the moon plans, moon-based plan. The most exciting part of that plan is the involvement of the private sector. So Jeff Bezos, the CEO of Amazon.com, one of his aspirations is to set up a lunar base. And that makes it all the more important. See, when the private sector comes and does it in a very sustainable, economically sustainable fashion. When the governments do it, they do it on taxpayer dollars, and it's always, there's always a limited amount of money there. So I think that is what is very, very significant also in this picture, where many, many countries. And so just as right now you have a base in Antarctica, 100 years ago, if somebody told you that, well, there's going to be a base in Antarctica, that would have sounded incredible. But similarly, today, if you told somebody that, well, there's going to be a base on the moon and people are going to live in a moon village for 365 days, then it sounds kind of like science fiction, but it is about to happen. It is because so many countries are interested and the private sector is interested. Okay, coming back to the question of Mars and where the future lies. So NASA started landing on Mars way back in 1976. We had a rover in 1997. The picture at that point was we thought there is no water on Mars. This changed in 2000, where we first detected a hydrogen signature at the poles of Mars. 7 years later, we sent a mission called Mars Phoenix, which landed at the location where the signal came from, and they verified that this hydrogen signature actually corresponded to water. Since then, there is water being found indirectly, like there is signs of landslides or slope failure, which is an indicative of subsurface water. So there is evidence of water under the ground. So what our vision was that Mars is a dry place, has completely transitioned, and right now we know there is some water on Mars. Now, going forward, we never thought there would be organic compounds on Mars. Organic compounds, as in compounds made of carbon that constitute life on Earth. So now organic compounds have already been detected. So the very big thing in the next decade or two will be to look for either past life on Mars or present life on Mars. And the reason this is so possible is because when the Earth and Mars formed around the same time at 4,500 million years from the present. So the first 500 or 700 million years of the formation, after formation, Earth and Mars had very different evolution. On Earth, there was widespread volcanism. It was a very hot, bubbling planet, which could not support life. So life on Earth started after the first 700 million years. That's when you see the signs of the first prehistoric fossils. On Mars, the first 700 years was completely Earth-like, as it is now. So there was huge reservoirs of water, probably oceans and big rivers. There was a thick atmosphere. And so it is highly possible that there was some sort of a life form evolved at that point. So would that life form be preserved in fossils today? And if yes, where would you find them? So it's a very exciting frontier. And I think all the countries would be excited to answer this question, just because think of a popular perspective. So, we have science fiction writers have thought about extraterrestrial life and little green men for many, many years. What if 10 years from now, we suddenly find that there indeed was life on Mars? It would change not just scientifically, culturally, it would change the human race to find that we were no longer alone in the universe.
Yes.
So I think that's the next big step in Mars exploration.
Yes, yes. So actually, when I was a little kid, all of these things would be the science fiction or the books or the storytelling or the films. But today, even in China, because we have the Zhurong, the Mars rover, just send back the pictures on the surface of Mars. So back to you, Mr. Zhu Jin. So when you first see the picture descending by China's own the Mars rovers, what do you think of that? And what do we excited to see the new discoveries, and what would be your feelings?
Yeah, so I think it's really exciting, because this time also the photos are different with like in our lunar lander, just the lander and they took each other photo. But this is I think the Zhurong that put a camera there and go back and together. So it takes the first photo together with the lander. But and also, yeah, we heard that. I myself also believe there might be still some kind of Martian life there. So I need more very careful research.
And
so
what's the meaning of that for the astronomers? For the people like you who are doing the research on the space.
Yeah, for me, my own professional interests are on minor planets, on asteroids. Asteroids may also some kind of future, even human landing there. Maybe not on Mars, maybe on asteroids. But for the case of Mars, I think is I think it's very important to answer the question: is there any outside the Earth? Can we find any kind of life there? But I think Mars is still a kind of possibility. And also there are some satellites with Saturn and Jupiter. And even several months before, some people thought maybe we could have the possibility to find kind of macro life on the Venus atmosphere, but it's no longer there. But anyway, so I think currently there are several landers and satellites around Mars, and I think maybe we'll just wait for the result. Maybe if in some lucky, or if some lander is just around some place where very interested things, and
yes,
then we can get the answer of.
This has been a very tough job and an arduous journey, and for every country participating in that. And quite interestingly, it's because of the Mars lander or the Mars rover, we have the different ways to name it. For example, in the United States, you call it, Mr. Gaush, you call the Mars rover the name of the Perseverance, right? And also back in China, we call it Zhurong. And this is really, really interesting. So please share with our audience, what's the difference, what's the meaning behind these countries? First, from you, Mr. Gaush, why the United States want to name the Mars rover and with the name, the Perseverance?
Right. So, I mean, I don't think I wouldn't read too much into the significance. The way the rovers are named in the US is there is a competition among high school students all over the country, and then they are the ones who suggest the names. And so based on tens of thousands of applications, and they have to, so the students have to suggest a name and then write an essay as to why they think that name should be there. So based on that, a jury panel decides on a name. So it's largely symbolic. So what is of course more important is the scientific mission behind the rover. So yes, I don't know about the significance of the Chinese rover
So I
name,
assume
but
so we'll
here
let
it is.
Mr. Yang Yuguang to explain. So why China named the Mars rover into the name was 祝融?
Yes, there are multiple choices, and we get many proposals from the public. You know that we call the Mars 火星 in Chinese, means the planet of fire. So many of the proposed names have the relationship with fire. You know that 祝融 is in the ancient mythology of China, it is called the god of fire. So that is the reason we finally choose 祝融 as our name of the rover. It is very interesting that I can still remember during the interviews in CGTN many years before, Mr. Amitabh Ghosh told that the most favorite thing he liked is to when he get up to watch the pictures of the rovers getting from the Mars every day. So today we can also get our pictures, but you know that Mr. Amitabh Ghosh tell you the questions, opinions about scientific research. But you know that I am engineer. From our view of the engineers, the most interesting thing is to have a human missions to the Mars in the future. Today, still, I don't think it is the right moment for us to talking about the colonizing Mars. I think it's important at the current stage because of the magnetic field of the Mars is too weak, and the fatal radiations will go directly onto a Martian surface, and nobody can stay there, and it's not very safe. And also, because of no protection from the magnetic field, the solar wind will also get rid of the atmosphere, even if you can produce another one. So I think today we should not talking about colonizing Mars, but I support the idea to set up a permanent base on the Martian surface. This is also very important. As Mr. Ghosh mentioned, we should find the evidence of life forms, and from this we can get a better understanding of our human being and our destiny. So in the future, we are also studying the possibility to have manned missions to Mars, but still very difficult. I think the whole total scale of human missions, even one mission, the scale will be much larger than the International Space Station. So today, to my own view, the nuclear propulsion, including the nuclear electric propulsion and the nuclear thermal propulsion, will be very critical for us to reduce the cost for Mars mission. The scientists, the engineers, has compared that with the help of nuclear reactors, the scale of a Mars mission can reduce to about 1/4 of which those totally based on the chemical propulsions. So today, I think the scientists and the engineers from all over the world should study about this possibility.
And also, Mr. Rubati, I know we talked about the Mars missions. Further in the topics of the moon village, we could have talked about the Mars village. So in terms of the Mars village, in terms of the cooperation on that, what do you think? What would be the necessary project? And all of these countries, not only China, but also the United States, can work on together on Mars.
Yeah, okay, but I'd like to say, if I don't mind, something about, because everybody keeps talking about the appealingness of Mars. I think I like to say one word about the moon, because the moon is 3 days away, and the moon was part of Earth. So therefore, I think the scientific discovery that we are going to make on the moon, they're going to be huge. We may even be able to find some of the early, let's say, proto-life left on the moon. So the message I want to give, everybody gets very excited about the prospect of Mars, which of course, rightfully so, but the moon also has water. And so I think we ought to first try to tackle the moon, and of course, at the same time, looking for Mars. But the sequence of events, we are going to go to the moon, set up the moon village. And by the way, by creating the moon village on the moon, we will have tried also the Mars village. Because as one of our colleagues in the advisory council of the Moon Village Association said, Moon Village Association stands for Most Valuable Association. The concept that we are bringing together by putting an organization which put together industry as well as space agency and academia and the public is going to be used, if successful, also for Mars. So the answer is yes. I think definitely in due time, when the number of stakeholders is increasing, we should do something similar to what we are doing now for the moon. But let's first see how successful we are as a humankind to have a new start on the moon, and then move forwards by having learned from the technological, scientific, and programmatic and cooperation how we're going to go about for doing that on Mars.
Yes, as the lover for space science and astronomy, I'm curious about one question, because Mr. Ghosh mentioned about the private sector, and also you mentioned about the MVA activities of your association is altogether from 39 countries and also the 28 institutional members around the globe. How do you think, besides the governmental level, what about the private level in terms of the cooperation in space?
Well, I think the question is to me?
Yes, Mr. Badi.
Okay. Well, okay. So, well, I think basically private industry is very keen to cooperate also with each other because we have to create world consortia. Basically, the cooperation is going by creating global consortia. If we will be able to bring together companies from different countries, each one with its own specialty, this will be an asset. So we have, as you mentioned yourself, in the government. So their role is, you need to understand, there is space industry and non-space industry. This is something which I think we ought to indicate. Going forward to the moon, we are not going to use only space industry, if I may use the word only. I think the moon is the place where technology is going to be developed, and a lot of non-space industry, big construction company, without making name, are in the United States and abroad. They are very keen and interested what they can do on the moon. Via SpaceX, we probably going to open 100-ton payload market on the moon. That kind of size of payload will allow a completely new field of, let's say, development and deployment on the moon. So in a nutshell, we will have not only space industry, which are busy trying to develop the carrier, the lander, but we will have a multitude of other industries, from the extraction industry, even to the cleaning industry. This is an interesting example.
Okay. So, Mr. Rabadi, thank you so much for this, for the answering of this part.
Industry might be interesting.
Okay. Okay. Another question is, Mr. Zhujian, I go these questions to you. It's about because of all the other three special guests here today, both online or in the studio. They are the expert in space science, and you are the expert in astronomy. So, what do you think? In the future, what do you think the science of astronomy plays in this grand picture for people, for human beings, to explore the space, the universe?
Oh yeah, but because for astronomer, what we are very interested in something outside the Earth itself. So you will see that many astronomers, in fact, they are more interested in the farthest part of the universe. So not only near the Earth or near our solar system, but still, because in the case of solar system, because we can send orbiter there, so we can send so it's quite different. The research for the inner solar system are quite different with other part of astronomy research. And for myself, I think because as fundamental research, usually when astronomers think things, they are not usually at the beginning they may not care too much about whether it has some if it is any connection with us, or if it is useful or not. So it's just curiosity. Curiosity is the most important things when astronomers make observations or do these things. But I think the space exploration is very, very important, at least for the young people to to make the exploration, the spirit of exploration, and also to have them curiosity about something not only in the Earth, but something outside. It's maybe at the first it looks no connection with us, but it's really very, very interesting to us, and it's kind of, I think, for the whole human, when we go forward, this kind of curiosity is very, very important.
Yes, that's really, really inspiring because it needs a for generations effort to explore the universe. So before we go, gentlemen, I want you to summarize your ideas. What's needed for exploring the space from your perspective? What is the most important things for us, not only China, the United States, Russia, or the European Union, but also the Earth, the entire planet? So this question starts from you, Mr. Yang Yuguang.
I will use the word of the pioneer of our space technology, Mr. Konstantin Tsiolkovsky. The Earth is the cradle of the humanity, but man cannot live forever in a cradle. So let's work together all over the world to have a bright future of humanity.
Mr. Ghosh?
So I think what is really required, see, the Earth is a revenue-stretched planet. More than 50% of the Earth's residents, maybe 3 billion of humans live without very basic necessities. So all the space exploration that you see is primarily funded by taxpayer dollars, by large countries. So what we really need is to find a mass market in space, something that you use in your daily life, and you needed to go to the moon or Mars to get it. That would be a way, or maybe it would be space tourism, that instead of going to Disneyland, you went to Mars. To find a mass market applicable to many, many people that would drive this frontier. If we find this mass market, then the space frontier will expand, and if not, it will be very investments by countries which will take it forward.
The marketization is the mass application of the space application for the general public. And also, Mr. Rabadi, what about you? Mr. Rabadi?
Well, for me, it's very simple. Yes, I'm here. So for me, it's very simple. It is sustainable cooperation, cooperation. There is nothing else that cooperation. We can only go together. Space is an hostile environment, and it has got a lot of, let's say, benefit, and this benefit needs to be shared by all countries. So the key word is cooperation.
Yeah, shared by many. Mr. Zhu Jun.
Yeah, I also think cooperation is very important, and especially when we face something which is what we call in astronomical scale, or if we face something which is much larger than the Earth, than the size of the Earth, or than the size of different countries. So in this case, if we face this kind of things, then I think we need. It's better for us don't just forget the difference between countries or something, and then we can face the maybe the same universe to our whole mankind. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, gentlemen. In this episode of the panel of discussions on the space science, we have moved from Earth to the space station, and also the Moon village, and also the Mars probing. It's quite interesting, and also we set the eyes for the future, generations to come. So we do hope in the next episode we can join together for the further topics. Thank you so much, gentlemen. And ladies and gentlemen, you're watching the latest episode of the Space Talks by the panel of judges, a panel of guests from around the world. And in the coming days, our reporters and hosts from around the country will bring more interesting topic on China's space project and space programs. And that will be really, really interesting. So please stay tuned. Thank you so much.